We're studying the book of Proverbs this summer, and these tasty nuggets of wisdomy goodness, I like to call them. And we've established that this is a book of the Bible that's a collection of wisdom written by Solomon and other writers, and it has a literary style. And that means that the Proverbs are meant to be meditated on, to be meditated on as wisdom. And it's this practical advice for a godly life. And they aren't rules or commandments or promises, and they aren't definitive, and they aren't comprehensive, and even they contradict each other at times. We're meant to apply them as wisdom. And they do have something, though, to teach us about what the life of faith looks like, what a kingdom life looks like. And my title this morning is The Wounds of a Friend. A number of years ago, I was part of a soccer team, a church soccer team, and it was after I'd had my hips replaced, and so I got the green light that I could play soccer again, and I really, really wanted to do this. So I joined the team, and on a church soccer team, there's a whole variety of different levels of people who play soccer. There's some really good players and some beginner players, and one of my friends who joined the team was a beginner player. In fact, he had never played soccer before in his life. And he wasn't particularly athletic. He could run very fast, though, which is helpful, but there's a lot of other parts to soccer if you know that game. And so he was on the team, and the other guys were really encouraging to him. And then one day he was hanging out in my office, and he began to complain to me about his limited playing time. So during the games, he would just get a little bit of time and then they'd pull him off. And so he was there in my office and he was saying, oh, the coach doesn't know what he's doing. And he went on, and the team, and he was just very disparaging. And I was kind of surprised that this was his take on it. And so I told him the truth. And I did this because I know he's a person who likes the truth and he values feedback. And so I said something like, why are you so mad? You're not a good soccer player. I said, you're playing with people who've been playing for years. Even I, who am not very good anymore, but I played soccer as a kid. I know the rules. You're a beginner soccer player. You don't know how to play very well. And you're mad like you're a professional soccer player who's been overlooked in the minutes of the game instead of a beginner who's getting playing time on a soccer team. I can't remember what he said after that. But I do remember that a few weeks later, he came to me and he said, thank you for telling me that. It did change my perspective on the team and on the coach. And I appreciate my place there now. Proverbs 27, 5-6 says, better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. And my big idea this morning is that Christians grow by giving and valuing trusted and loving feedback. Christians grow by giving and valuing trusted and loving feedback. This is both has virtue and vice in it. And I think as a world we struggle with, like, is this a virtue or is this a vice when people just say things to you? You're like, do I want that or not? And there's a bunch of memes out there. I found a few, when your job asks for an honest feedback on any workplace issue. And then there's that movie, You Can't Handle the Truth. And I think the world is wrestling through, do we appreciate this or not? Or the next slide is some tweets. Don't read that one. There's like different tweets. My favorite is the bottom left corner. I want my 13-year-old to understand how important honesty is, but also know that she's 12 when kids eat free. I thought that was a good Mennonite joke for the frugal Mennonites here. That's for some of you, right? And I think all these kind of means, they express this this wrestle with like, how do we feel about this? Is this good or bad, this thing? And so I think if we take our Proverbs interpretation questions and we apply them to this passage, we can unpack it a little bit. So the questions we have are, what virtue does this proverb commend? What vice, secondly, does it disapprove? And then thirdly, what value does this proverb affirm? Because we're trying to figure out what is the proverb saying so that we can apply its wisdom. So what's the virtue? What's the virtue? It's open rebuke or trusted wounds, it says. The ESV says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. So the virtue is that trusted or faithful friend sometimes wounds you by telling you the truth. And there's something valuable in the feedback from someone who loves you. So the virtue, we could call it honesty, or giving loving rebuke, or receiving loving rebukes, or valuing feedback. And then the second question is, well, what's the vice here? What's the vice? If the virtue is to be able to give and receive feedback, the vice is to love flattery. The two things the proverb diminishes are hidden love and flattery, or multiplied kisses, it says. And there's this sense of concealing or secrecy in the hidden love. There's something that's not visible or vocal. And then there's this word multiplies. It has a negative connotation. And so sometimes it's translated deceitful, or so in the ESV it's profuse, many are the kisses of an enemy. And the New American Standard says deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. And I think whether they're profuse or deceitful, in the end, it's from an enemy. That's what's important here. This is not someone you trust. This is someone with an agenda, someone with their own purpose or reason. And they're saying what you want to hear. That's the trouble. Not correction, but kisses. Proverbs 12:15 says, the way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. There's those pictures of people with wild animals. Why don't we? Why is this hard for us? I feel like if we're honest, we'll say this is hard for most of us. Not all of us, but most of us. Why is this so hard? Why is it difficult? Many of you know Lauren and I and our family planted a church many years ago in Maple Ridge. And when I went to do that, they gave me a church planting coach. And so I met with my church planting coach, and his name was Chris Douglas. Maybe some of you know Chris. And Chris, if you know him, he's an effusive encourager. And so I would go and meet with Chris, and I would share, I'm really struggling with all these things. I don't think I'm doing a good job with this, and this is really hard. And he would say, you're doing great. Just keep it up. Don't worry about this. You're doing great. He would just keep encouraging me. And when I'd see him in a conference or a meeting, he would introduce me to people like, you're going to love this guy. This guy, you're going to love him. And I would just feel so encouraged. And then they switched my church planting coach. And my second church planting coach was named Reg Taves. If you know Reg, he's our BCMB conference moderator now. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Just kidding. No. I sat down with Reg. I was like, okay, I have a new coach. What's this going to be like? And I did the same thing I did with Chris. I began to share all the stuff I'm struggling with, and I have this problem, and this is so hard. And Reg didn't say anything. He just listened. And at the end of all my sharing, then he started asking me questions, very pointed questions. Well, why did you say that? Or what were you thinking here? Or why do you think that happened? And I was like, I don't like this. I went home to Lauren. I want my encourager back. I don't like all these pointed questions, but I'll tell you that over the next few months, I found that I actually grew a lot because of all of that feedback. I love rebuke, said no one ever. Right? The comedian Louis C.K., he says, friends should always tell you the truth, but please don't. Right? Why is it so hard for us to do this, to give and receive feedback or correction? What is it about this that is just chafes against us? The word rebuke even, I looked it up, I was like, maybe there's another meaning here that's like nicer than rebuke. And the other words are correction, reproof, chastisement, and chiding. Like, none of this do we like. All of this is hard. And I was thinking, why is it so hard for us to receive feedback? And I thought of 3 reasons. You might have other ones, but firstly, we take feedback as judgment or failure. Often, many of us want to do something perfect the first time we try. And when someone comes along and says, hey, here's some feedback, you're like, no, then I feel like a failure. Even if I know failure is a way that I grow and change and improve myself. Secondly, we live in our story. And so I think many of us, we're just trying to do the best we can. Maybe you're maxed. Your life is maxed out and you're just trying to react to things that are happening. You're doing the best you can. And then someone comes along and is like, hey, by the way, you missed this and this and this. And it's like, oh, it's so hard to hear that. Feedback sounds like criticism. And we feel it. We react. We defend or we deflect because it's hard to hear it. A third reason why it's so hard to receive feedback is because it hurts. It actually does hurt. That's why wounds of a friend is an applicable word, wound, because it feels like that. It does wound you. And I was thinking about, what does it hurt so much in me? And I realized it hurts my pride, actually. It hurts my ego. It hurts my need to please everyone and make them like me. That feels like it's hurting that part of me. And then I was thinking, it's not just receiving feedback that's so hard, it's giving feedback is hard too for many, many of us. Why is it so hard to give feedback? And I thought of 3 reasons. One reason is we're worried that it will be taken badly. Because it has been at times, right? Have you ever tried to give feedback and it doesn't go well? It creates conflict or tension in your friendship or your relationship. And so we say, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to cause that problem. A second reason is we've seen it done badly. So we've all experienced the unwanted or ill-timed feedback. Someone who walks in another group and says something, right after the sermon, someone comes up and is like, your sermon was terrible. It's like, that's ill-timed. Send me an email on Monday, right? We don't want to be that person, do we? The third reason I came up with why it's so hard to give feedback is that our culture doesn't approve of it. So correction is perceived as intolerance or judgment. And so we're afraid. We live in a culture where it's like, you do you, I have my truth, you have yours, don't put your stuff on me. So then to give correction or feedback or rebuke is like, whoa, that's really counter to culture. Wisdom, though, says that we need to learn how to give and receive feedback. We need to do this better. So why should we? There's a story about an upscale New York City gym. It's in a club. And in the locker room, there's a big bench, and all the guys are getting ready. And a phone rings on the bench, and a guy reaches over and puts it on speakerphone in the middle of the locker room. And so this guy starts having a conversation. Everyone goes quiet because he's having a conversation out loud in the locker room. And this was the conversation. The man says, hello? And the woman says, hi, honey, it's me. Are you at the club? And he says, yes. Well, I'm out shopping and I found this beautiful leather coat and it's only $2,000. Are you okay if I buy it? He says, yeah, sure, go ahead if you like it. She says, oh, okay, great. Well, and I stopped by the Lexus dealership and there's one of the new models I really liked. It's on sale. And he says, well, how much is it on sale for? She says, $90,000. He says, great, for that price, put in all the options. Sounds good. And she says, one more thing. I was just talking to Jamie and I found out the house we wanted to buy last year is back on the market. They're asking for $2 million. Remember, it was well over $3 million when we looked at it? And the man says, yeah, I don't know. Make an offer for 1.9 and they'll probably take it. And if not, we can go the extra 100 if that's what we really want. She says, wow, great. Well, I'll see you later. I love you so much. And he says, I love you too. And then hangs up. And everyone in the locker room is staring at this guy. And then he looks out and he says, does anyone know whose phone this is? Do you just want to hear a yes, or do you want to talk to your husband? Do you want the truth? right? Many we want, yeah, just say yes, yes, yes. And I'm like, no, you don't. Why is this beneficial to us? Proverbs 24:26 says, an honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. There's something valuable and beautiful in it. I remember being at a business leadership conference, and the speaker was talking about blind spots. These areas in our life that we can't see, but that other people can see, are areas of weakness or difficulty that are invisible to me. And so that's why we need these trusted people in our lives to see these places in us and to call it out. And at the end of this session, my friend who I worked with was sitting there, and he turned to me. He was actually my boss, and he said, you tell me my blind spots, let's do this. Tell me my blind spots, let's do it. And I proceeded not to tell him his blind spots. But if I'd been courageous enough and he'd been steely enough, we'd have grown. We'd have been more Christian, we could say. We'd have been truer friends. Last week, a woman came into my office. She poked her head in and said, do you have a minute? And I said, yeah, come on in. And so she came in and closed the door, and she said, I wanted to tell you something in love. And I was like, okay, I prepare myself. That's good, prepare me. So I prepared myself. And then she said, a couple months ago, in an envelope, I gave you gift cards for you and your wife to go out for dinner. And then I never heard anything back. Nothing. I didn't even know if you got them or not. And I just wanted to tell you, I don't think that's good. And I said, oh man, I'm so sorry. We had it, and I was gonna say thank you, and I waited, and we haven't gone out, and so I waited. And I'm so sorry. I can see how that would be so hurtful to you. And then she said, oh, I'm not hurt. I'm coming as a mother to a son to tell you it is polite when someone gives you a generous gift to acknowledge it and to say thank you. And I said, you're right. Flo demonstrated the virtue of giving loving feedback to me so that I could grow. The truth is, feedback is essential to growth. And the Proverbs are filled with this theme, the idea that we would welcome discipline and correction. Over and over and over. I'll give you a few. Proverbs 13:1. A wise son heeds his father's instruction, but a mocker does not respond to rebukes. Or Proverbs 15:12. Mockers resent correction, so they avoid the wise. Proverbs 29:1. Whoever remains stiff-necked after many rebukes will suddenly be destroyed without remedy. That's a scary one. Proverbs 13:18, whoever disregards discipline comes to poverty and shame, but whoever heeds correction is honored. The warnings are prolific. You would be a fool to scorn loving feedback. And you would be wise to learn to love it and value it. Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen wrote a book called Thanks for the Feedback, and the subtitle on the book is Even When It's Off Base, Unfair, Poorly Delivered, and Frankly, You're Not in the Mood. I like that. It's like, that does feel like a lot of feedback. And they went out and they went into these companies and they studied what are the success factors in the company. And they found that a way to give and receive feedback in the company was a success factor. Companies that had this did better. And they found that it wasn't just one kind of feedback. Actually, there were 3 essential kinds of feedback they found. The first one was appreciation. What do you think of the Chris Douglas kind of appreciation, the encouragement? You're on the right track. Keep going. You're doing well. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep it up. That's important. Secondly, coaching, which maybe is the Reg version, right? Of like someone helping you grow and change. They're asking you hard questions. They're developing skills in you. They're pointing out things you need to grow in. And then the third one is evaluation, like comparing against a standard, which is often how we think of it, right? But that's important too. All these ways are important at different times and important to our growth. Now, the world gets this. It's interesting because they seem to get it. I read a book by the president of Pixar, the animation studio. He was then the president. I don't know if he still is, and the book was called Creation Incorporated. And he talks about how cool the company is, how they get to have all these offices, and people think, oh, this is so neat. Like your office is a castle, and your office is a tiki hut, and your office is a dollhouse. They like really creative things. They have rock bands on the front lawn every Friday. It's like, whoa, this is so neat. And then he says, that's not what makes Pixar so special. And then this is what he says. What makes Pixar special is that we acknowledge we will always have problems, many of them hidden from view, that we will work hard to uncover these problems, even if doing so means making ourselves uncomfortable, and that when we come across a problem, we marshal all our energies to solve it. And I think, why does it seem that the business world is putting this wisdom to good use, while the church remains mired in flattery and image protection and defensiveness? What do we value? What's important? When our kids were small, we went to Stanley Park to ride the train. And we had to wait because the train goes around and you got to stand there. And in the waiting line, there's like a long thing. And at the end of, I don't know if they still have this, but at the end of each kind of line, when you turn, they had a funhouse mirror. And so the funhouse mirror is like, it's like, makes you very tall and skinny, which is great for me. And other ones will make you short and fat. And so it's like all these different ones. And you're like, oh, but our kids loved this. They just kept jumping in front of it and doing all these things. And everyone who was waiting just were entertained by my children running around with the funhouse mirrors. And I think it is funny. It's funny to see yourself that way. It's fun. It's like we laugh. But no one is putting a funhouse mirror in their bathroom. Right? Like, we don't want that inaccurate feedback. In the same way, we can like nice things people say about us. It's great. But at the end of the day, we need truth in order to grow. So how is this a kingdom value? And I'll tell you, first of all, it's a gospel principle. I came in confession. I don't know about you, but I think most of us did. Come in confession. I acknowledged that I couldn't do it, that I was a sinner, that I failed. I failed to save myself. I failed to qualify myself for God's standard. I just couldn't do it. I wasn't enough. I failed to be perfect. And this involves honest reflection, looking at yourself and saying, I need a Savior. And then I confessed my trust in Jesus to save me, to make me whole, to heal me in every way. And then the confession continues because I have to acknowledge that I'm still growing, that I'm a mess of contradictions, that the good I want to do, I don't do, and the things I don't want to do, that's what I end up doing, to quote Paul. I wander. I sleep spiritually. I lose my focus. And I confess that I'm on this journey of growth. And that involves honest reflection. Where am I missing it? What do I need to change? Jesus, what do you want to bring up in me? 2 Corinthians 3:18 says, we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord who's the Spirit. And I often think the change is happening when I contemplate, when I go into silence and solitude and I behold the Lord, and I am changed in some ways there. But the truth is, so much do I experience transformation when I go into my everyday life and I'm confronted by myself, by my own things, my weaknesses, my major flaws, my insecurity, my need for control, my desire for pleasure, my distractedness, my forgetfulness, my lack of trust. And I need people around me to say, hey, John, what's going on right now? Hey, do you know you just did this again? Hey, you know you're talking like that? Like, I need the feedback of people I trust. We need humility for personal transformation. Like, if you can't come to the cross without a measure of humility to accept Jesus, why do we now prop up our Christian life with religious effort and image? Why do we think that's the thing? Paul in 1 Corinthians says, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so no one may boast before him. It's because of him that you're in Christ Jesus. And this continued attitude of humility allows us to give and receive feedback for growth. And we need humility for community life, to do this together. This is what, to have relationships that are based in truth, it means we're building a culture like this in our church. Ephesians 4:15 says, instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. That's how Paul talks about the church. He says, instead of being infants tossed back and forth, blown about here and there by deceit, which sounds suspiciously like the kisses of your enemy, he says we would be speaking the truth in love, the wounds of a friend. But the expression and the proverb don't cover all the options, so I'm going to give you two caveats before we end. One is, not everyone is giving you true and accurate feedback. Some feedback is inaccurate or it's distorted. People are in their own story or they're in their own pain, and so they're saying things out of that place, and it's distorted or inaccurate. And so you can't take all feedback as being the same. And second, my second warning is that you shouldn't open yourself to feedback from everyone. And sometimes that's how we come out of a message like this. We're like, okay, John said, now I'm just going to hit me with it, everybody. Like, don't do that. Because some people don't love you, and they don't have your best in mind, and they might even be trying to hurt you. So we keep that in mind. These are caveats, they're exceptions. Wisdom would say we would aim in this direction. People who speak the truth in love, people who give and receive feedback. In conclusion, Christians grow by giving and valuing trusted and loving feedback. The Christian virtue we're aspiring to is this, that we would be able to give and receive feedback. Sometimes this hurts, mostly our pride, but it's better than flattery. And we'll admit this is hard for us to do. Hard to admit we're growing. It's hard to admit we need help. It's hard to have someone say it. It's hard to be the one to say it. But this is better. The business world already knows this. You need feedback to grow. And so we need to learn how to give and receive feedback better. Like, we need to learn. It's hard. We'll have to practice. This is what it means to live the gospel. We confess our weakness like we did at salvation, and we grow in love. Together, let's pray. Oh, Lord, this message is for me, for sure. I wrestle with this. It's hard. And I think hard for many of us. How do we do this? How do we walk it out together? And I don't even know, Jesus. We know that this is about you, us walking with you and following your Spirit and having you change us. But we want this to mark us somehow as a community, to build a culture of love in honesty and feedback. So would you help us? Help us today to begin to lower our guard, the guard of image and flattery and and defensiveness. Help us to come even before you in honest reflection to say, we need you. Would you come and meet us? Would you bring your healing presence? Would you transform us? Help us to walk together as a people of love, a community who cares and walks together. Thank you that you can do this, even though it might be impossible for us. Thank you that you live in us by your Spirit. We do love you. Amen.